Hello and welcome to the Tampering Podcast, part of the Athletic NBA Show Network. I'm Sam Amick, NBA national writer at The Athletic. Usual suspect Anthony Slater on the program today, coming from his West Coast hub. And we got another West Coaster, friend of the program, friend in life. All things Lakers. Jovan Buha has certainly been on the pod before. Jovan, you thought you might be out in Cancun. You thought you might be, mowing the lawn. I don't know if you have a lawn.
I
You
don't.
thought you would be
I
doing.
don't, and I wouldn't be mowing it if I did.
I literally mowed my lawn today, as an aside. Suburban life. Your
I'm
Lakers
not a
are in.
handyman. I'm not.
Well, hold on. This is not a Bob Vila podcast, but mowing a lawn doesn't make you a handyman. That's all right, though. Your Lakers are in the second round of the NBA playoffs. What is happening? A couple months ago, when you and I were reporting on the Russell Westbrook experience in Lakerland, and prior to that, all kinds of drama with the Lake Show, but most of it did not involve winning games. They turn their season around. Rob Pelinka wins the NBA trade deadline. They play well down the stretch. They get to the second round, and they now find themselves, and that's why today's pod is perfect, because Slater is all things Warriors first and foremost. They find themselves taking on the one, the only Steph Curry and the Warriors. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this in the second round, guys. It's Steph versus LeBron is the kind of boxing style headline billboard framing of this series. First time since 2018 when they met in the finals that we have seen them. Fifth time total. That's a very long intro, but thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. Can't wait to dive into this series. Jovan, what's up, sir? How are you?
I'm doing well. I think. Well, technically, do we count the play-in tournament? Because they did meet in 2021 in the 7-8 matchup. The Lakers won by 3.
Fair,
Uh,
fair.
I mean, the Warriors.
Doesn't
The
the
Warriors.
NBA like not even count those stats?
No,
They're these like
stats don't count.
Non.
That's when Draymond poked LeBron in the eye. LeBron hits that like 34-foot dagger where he says
Where he
he
was
saw
like, I
three
was
rims.
seeing 3 baskets.
Yeah.
That's right.
But that I feel like that's probably the closest thing we have to a preview of like what this could look like, maybe, because the regular season matchups, it's a little tough to take away. Like, 3 of them happen after the trade deadline, so technically with the Lakers,
I think
new
makes the
group.
data more useful, right?
But LeBron missed 2 games, Steph missed 2 games, Wiggins missed 2 games, so it's like, any matchup without LeBron or Steph, it's just, you can only take away so much. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a tough series. I think both, like for both teams, really, it's a stylistic 180 compared to the previous opponent they just had in the first round. For the Lakers, they were playing a Grizzlies team that just could not shoot, and the strategy was pack the paint, funnel everything to AD. And I know they're going to try to do some of that against the Warriors, but you are going to have to live with those 3-point barrages that they go on. And obviously for Golden State, a much different offense in the Lakers, and them attacking the rim, trying to get to the free throw line, much more physical, bigger defense, I think, also in the Lakers. So really, I'm interested to see kind of the game one feel out process of both of these teams having to adjust drastically to their previous, I think, schemes really on both ends, and kind of how that chess match plays out in like that first quarter, first half.
Yeah, the schemes will be interesting, but even before that, I think this is really good for the league. I think the first round, especially Lakers Memphis was a really good first round series, better than your typical first round series. Obviously, storyline filled, the ratings were good. Warriors Kings exploded ratings wise. It went 7, which the league always loves a good game 7, particularly and they wouldn't obviously say this, but if their brand moves on, right, and it moves on right into Warriors Lakers, where it's this will probably outrate last year's finals, right? This will probably outrate most of particularly the last few finals. Like, this is going to be huge branding wise, I think, for the league at this part of the calendar. And also from a Warriors perspective, they get home court, which means that they could get an extra home game in the second round, which they did not see coming, right? I think I saw a stat that this is the latest in the playoffs a 6 seed has ever had home court, which means there's never been a 6-7 in the second round. Which is
That
kind
might
of
explain
crazy.
why we had 2 columns on The Athletic today about whether or not the regular season matters anymore. But
Yeah,
that's a different topic.
it is.
Yeah.
It is fair. I mean, and Jovan just laid it out how much can we really take from the regular season matchups. I just had the same thought when I was previewing Warriors Kings, and basically now it's like every matchup you don't even know going in because it's like this guy didn't play with. But I wanted to go back to quickly for the Warriors. I just think this, from a financial standpoint, is huge for them to squeak by the Kings and to get the money that is going to be flowing in gate wise in this second round. You're probably thinking this is going at least 5, right? Nobody's predicting a sweep. That's at least 3 home games and home Lakers playoff games, where the pricing I've already seen for both venues is skyrocketing. So I just think as the Warriors enter this kind of unknown landscape, what are they going to do this offseason? This crazy tax bill and all the CBA implications that are ahead. I just think Lakers Warriors comes at a very good time for both league and I think both franchises.
Slater, so much concern for the league's bottom line. You just worried about this plucky little basketball league that's not making much money.
Would you both agree that like the ratings have been concerning the last few years, the last half decade? Like it's been on a downturn.
For sure. And you know what? The part of me that just enjoys the game would say that what I like about how it's unfolded so far, tell me if you guys disagree, is that it's been fairly holistic, organic, whatever you want to call it, meaning we don't have many controversies in terms of like Slater, you kind of alluded earlier to the league's brand getting through on the Warriors side in the second round. The Warriors went and beat the hell out of the Kings in game 7 from a basketball standpoint. There's no controversy. It's not an officiating conspiracy theory type of thing. It's just lining up this kind of way. And I think you're right. I mean, Lakers Grizzlies, not to go too far backwards, but that was compelling. That was fascinating. Old versus young. Jovan on the Warriors side, I was cracking up because the Warriors made such a big deal out of what I thought was a fairly innocuous Malik Monk quote, not saying he did not call them old. He said, we're a little younger than they are, but it was that similar like Dylan Brooks type of quote. So you had that old versus young thing in Warriors Kings. It's good theater, right? And it was compelling and entertaining. And yes, now you have Lakers Warriors second round. I don't think this guy would mind me sharing this. Like Rich Paul was at the Kings game, game 7, and I saw him on the way out of the building, and he was just kind of like shaking his head at the idea that LeBron and Steph were meeting in the second round. Like he was almost lamenting, like, it's too bad it's not the conference finals, but whatever. Like the conference finals still have all kinds of good possible matchups down the line. I think it'll be fun. And to go back to Jovan, how I kind of threw it to you, how do you see this in terms of the Lakers and the question of how legitimate they are right now and how dangerous they are right now? Because it is still, my brain is still having a hard time compartmentalizing or processing the before and the after of who they are. And then I've just seen the Warriors play like the good old fashioned dynasty Warriors. I do have the Warriors winning this series in however many games. I think they are the better team, but how do you see it?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I think my first initial reaction was like Warriors in 6 or 7, and then I went through some film, kind of looked over the numbers. I guess I'm contradicting myself a little bit in taking away some stuff where I do think I think the Lakers match up with the Warriors pretty well on the perimeter in terms of their defense and their like to me, I just wrote a preview for the series, and D'Angelo Russell to me is the X factor of, I don't know who he starts on defensively. I think it's going to be Clay or Andrew Wiggins. And then if you're the Warriors, you're probably targeting that guy and bringing him up into actions with Steph and, maybe running some post ups or ISOs where, those guys can just shoot over D'Lo and kind of body him and stuff. So I think he's important just because offensively, I know the Lakers are going to try and limit Golden State's attack, but there's going to be stretches where it's just a shootout, and I don't think the Lakers can win a shootout if D'Lo is not on the floor. With those, you saw the runs he's had. The game 6 against the Grizzlies comes to mind in that third quarter where he hits 4 threes and really just buries them. But he had a couple stretches like that in that series where D'Lo really is one of those guys that can just heat up, and it's just an avalanche of mid-range jumpers, threes, pick and roll action. So I think for the Lakers to have a chance in at least a couple of these games that end up being a little high scoring, they're going to need some big D'Lo performances. But I think there's just a chess match of
quickly on the
yeah.
D'Lo thing, and we've got to remember there's a personal connection here too. I mean, the Warriors signed him to the big deal that he's finishing right now, and decided within 3-4 months that they just didn't think he was a winning player. I mean, like that was made very clear. Obviously traded him to Minnesota, a willing participant that not only gave them Andrew Wiggins, but also gave them the draft pick that became Jonathan Kuminga. Another side story of the series that we can maybe get to, but I just think what the Warriors have viewed D'Lo as and what D'Lo can maybe show against them in this series is kind of a subplot.
Yeah, and I said, the kind of the final line for me in my portion of the story about him being the X Factor was, I think this is going to go a long way in determining how much money he gets this summer. Like if D'Lo, because D'Lo had some rough stretches in the Memphis series where he was benched at times and had some subpar performances offensively.
2 straight years, by the way. Remember in Minnesota last year, he was benched for McLaughlin in Game 6 against.
Yeah, so. And the Lakers have all the guys they could go to. Austin Reeves obviously has really broken out since the trade deadline and has kind of stepped up as really more of the number 3 than D'Lo has been, at least from a consistency standpoint. Dennis Schroeder is a Darvin Ham favorite, someone he loves closing with, and someone who's played a big role off the bench. I think it's going to be big in this series, defending Steph and trying to navigate screens and whatnot. So I think the Lakers have other alternatives that they can go to if D'Lo's shot isn't falling, if he's getting picked on defensively. But I look at him on the Lakers side as a key kind of swing guy. For the Warriors, I look at Kevon Looney, and we saw 3 20 rebound games against the Kings, and I think the Lakers are gonna ignore him. I think they're gonna ignore Draymond, but then you get into the dribble handoff actions, the kind of quick hitting pick and rolls that they get into, and I think if AD and LeBron are roaming and trying to put out fires on the perimeter, or send more attention to Steph or Clay or Wiggins or Poole, then now all of a sudden Austin Reeves is matched up with Kevon Looney on a switch in the paint, and can he battle him and keep him off the glass? And like it's going to be, to me, a lot of that chess match of the Lakers guards and wings having to keep Kevon Looney and Draymond Green off the glass and make sure those guys aren't making the Lakers pay for, paying again, extra attention to other guys. So just those little things I think are going to be fascinating.
It's really, it's Looney
quick, how
for
do you
sure,
see...
but it's Wiggins too on the offensive glass. Sam, you should go. But I know Wiggins, especially if they put Russell on him, they'll tell Wiggins crash. They might not post him up a bunch, but it's just like, go attack the glass. Sam, go ahead.
No, I just wanted your take on the front court before you get to Wiggins. The Looney thing, I mean, it was incredible to see what he did against the Kings. I mean, Jovan, this was kind of a funny moment. He's walking out of the locker room after Game 7. Warriors esteemed PR man Ray Ritter is trying to get him to the press conference room. And in so many words, he says, Wilt, are you ready? He calls him Wilt. And as he's walking, and I kind of laughed, and Kevon was right next to me. And I said, man, you better tell him to get you that Wilt contract. And quite the retort. Another member of the PR staff looks at me and goes, yeah, that was probably about 80 grand a year, So I said, all right, fair enough. But he was a monster against the Kings. And I'm looking
well, you remember
at
what this to extend your story, this conversation was about. They were thanking him because he had just done his like 5th or 6th different post-game interview, right? He was like,
right,
besides Steph, the star of the show, the second best player in the series, he just gone on NBA TV, like ISO studio interview, this and that. And I think he was like, thanks again, Wilt, or something like that.
Yes. I mean, yeah, but he looked like Wilt out there on the court too. But how's that going to look against these Lakers? Because Slater, I'm looking at AD's game log from this Grizzlies series, and I know this is kind of fun with numbers. I'm framing it to make him look bad, but like 3 of his last 5 games scoring in the teens. And I think I have this right. I mean, he's coming in, like 14, I think, of 36 from the field combined. And that's just the up and down nature of AD.
Yeah.
And how that matchup looks. Your thoughts?
I don't think they're that scared of him on the offensive end. I think they do know, like, look, he had a 39-point game against them this year. And if he has one of those games, especially when he's hitting jumpers, like that's going to be very tough to beat the Lakers. But I think if the Lakers primarily are just letting Davis go one-on-one against Draymond or Looney, the Warriors are okay with that. They feel like he's not that efficient of a jump shooter. And as you saw with Sabonis in that series, these are, I think, two of the top 10 best defensive bigs in the league. So they'll just take that challenge. Where I think Davis is a major problem for the Warriors is on the other end. You saw it during the regular season. 3 of the Warriors' worst 15 offensive games this season came against the Lakers. What they found they could do against the Kings, and this was Draymond scoring 21 in game 5 on the road to get a win, and obviously Steph yesterday, how many just little float shots?
22 points in the paint.
Yeah, just getting in there and like, oh, Domantas Sabonis is coming over. Not concerned. Layup off the glass. That's not Anthony Davis. This Warriors team is small and historically has struggled with size, particularly when you have an elite rim protector. I'm thinking Jaren Jackson in a Memphis series. Robert Williams. Remember how good Robert Williams was in the finals, even though he was dragging his right leg up the court basically half the time? I just think Davis, he showed it in the regular season. He showed it in the past. He bothers the smaller Warriors and then creates a very concerning question for the Warriors where defensively they want to play Looney and Draymond together, right? That's this elite starting lineup. They went back to it in game 7, but it's very tough for them to play 2 non-shooting bigs who don't even care about shooting jumpers, against a team with a great rim protector. They could do it against Sacramento. I don't know if they can do it against the Lakers. So then you're talking about, shift to Jordan Poole. What type of series is Jordan Poole coming off right now?
Well, and that's the problem, I think, potentially offensively with the Warriors, is that Steph has carried them in this first round. And what if, like you said, Slater, AD is protecting that rim and those lanes get shut down? Now you're having to lean on Clay and Wiggins and Poole. And I got the numbers in front of me here. I mean, Steph was at 33.5 basically points per game in this series. And number 2 was Clay down at 20. And then Wiggins at 18. Jordan Poole had a tough series. He's down at 12. I think that comes into play. I also want your thoughts, either one of you guys, on the Lakers being so much more egalitarian, I guess you'll call it, just the way they spread things out offensively. When not so long ago, this was the LeBron, AD, and the Misfits type approach.
I want to
yes.
give Jovan that question because I'm curious. But to add to your point, Sam, I thought it was interesting. Were you in Draymond's press conference last night?
I was, yeah.
He mentioned LeBron being off ball more than ever and how impressed he was that LeBron was playing off the ball much more than the Cleveland teams they're used to. The Cleveland teams the Warriors are used to was LeBron control pace the entire time, slow it down, have the ball. It seems that they believe he's a different version of himself because of who the Lakers are. Is that what you're seeing with the Lakers?
Yeah. So kind of fun stat from last series. The Lakers had 5 different leading scorers in their 6 games, including, of course, once LeBron, twice AD, but Rui Hachimura led them in game 1. Austin Reeves led them in a game, and D'Angelo Russell ended up leading them in game 6. So just from that alone, another fun number from the championship season was that championship group, and one of the knocks on them throughout the regular season when comparing them to the Clippers and the Bucks was like, who's the Lakers' number 3 guy? Like, is it Kyle Kuzma? Is it KCP? Is it like, can those guys score in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera? And they had one guy, Rondo, score 20 or more points in a playoff series or in a playoff game in the bubble. And that was Rondo against the Rockets. I believe that was conference semifinals. Already,
did he get like randomly super hot from 3 one game against the Rockets?
I think that's the game where he gets 21 points. But already this series, D'Lo's had a 21 point game. A 31 point game. Austin Reeves has had a couple 20-point games. Rui's had a couple 20-point games. So like you're seeing I don't know if they're a better supporting cast, because I think that supporting cast was underrated. They obviously won a championship, but from an offensive perspective, they're definitely a better supporting cast, and just the weaponry that they have and the different ways they can attack you, where, okay, you want to take out AD in the post, you want to take out LeBron in the pick and roll or in the post. Like, they have guys that can make shots. They have guys that can attack from the second side, different actions they can go to. So I really think that this is a much better group offensively than really any of the Lakers' previous LeBron AD groups. And defensively, I mean, they were the best defense in the league after the trade deadline. So I think coming in, like,
second best, Jovan, real quick, in the playoffs, and it's pretty close. Them and Philly, and I know it's a small sample size, but
Philly got Brooklyn, so I feel like that's a slight asterisk,
right?
Too, right?
Yeah, and they're right there. So it's carried over so far too.
It's carried over, and I think again to Slater's point, like I think there's more chess match things where like can Jared Vanderbilt stay on the floor and can he handle Steph or I think there's kind of two variations of that perimeter the way they go with those perimeter matchups of one is Vanderbilt on Steph, and then you probably go D'Lo on Wiggins and Reeves on Clay, or you go Reeves on Steph, Vanderbilt on either Clay or Wiggins, and then you put Russell on the other guy. But I'm interested to see who they put Russell on, because that to me is kind of like the sign of who's the lesser threat in the Lakers' eyes. And if that's Clay, like I got to think the Warriors are going to try and run him off a bunch of off ball stuff. But
yeah, I mean, the Warriors I think would love that, right, Slater? Because
probably.
if it's Clay, first of all, he didn't have a very good first round. He's going to be thirsty. He's in his hometown. He talked at length after Game 7 about how excited he is, and the kind of neat, personal tie with his dad's history with the franchise. He grows up,
his dad's going to be hilarious.
He will be hilarious. Has he given a public prediction? I thought about calling him today. Do we know what dad is saying?
I don't know if he's given a public prediction, but typically every time the Warriors and Lakers play, I go on their pregame, the Lakers pregame radio, and Michael Thompson's one of the people like that's within the interview, and he's just firing takes about the Warriors, and they're great. Like he was, they'll rue the day they'll trade James Wiseman and like all these things, and it's like it's just funny because typically it's like, wow, like this is Klay Thompson's dad saying these things, but if you're on the inside, you understand like Klay's opinions and Michael's opinions shouldn't be considered, But a lot of times, I think sometimes in sports, like if a parent says it, we ascribe it too much to the player, but Michael's going to be funny during the series, I think.
No, I agree. But on the Clay front, I just think he's going to be thirsty because he knows that Steph can't carry the entire group again. And, we know how proud Clay is. He's been reminding us all season long. If he's John with Devin Booker and flashing four fingers, to remind everybody he's got 4 rings, or kind of barking at Charles Barkley about the doubt that, that Chuck kind of expressed earlier in the season about who Clay is in the here and the now. He's got a lot to play for. I think he's going to be fired up. And I think they'd be just fine with, think about that in a vacuum. The idea of picking on Klay Thompson, even if he's not exactly what he used to be, that's good for the Warriors. And again, I think they're in a good spot here.
Yeah, I think one thing to quickly add that I probably should have mentioned earlier is like I think the biggest thing looming over this entire series for me is the health of LeBron and AD. I think both guys had moment. I mean, you mentioned the multiple games in the teens for AD. Like, part of that was Memphis's defense and the way that Xavier Tillman was able to body him one-on-one. Honestly, in similar ways to how Kevon Looney and Draymond Green were able to defend him in the regular season as well. But I think part of it too is AD and LeBron have both not really looked physically right since kind of the end of the regular season. For LeBron coming back from that foot injury really earlier than anyone expected. I mean, everything we had heard kind of around the team was maybe the final few games of the regular season. He comes back with 8 games left, and he's had some good games. He's had some good moments. He's still throwing down these ridiculous dunks in game, but like overall, kind of for the aggregate, LeBron has not been the same player offensively since his return. And I think AD, has kind of had some of those moments as well, where he was someone that was resting back-to-backs throughout most of the season, and I think just the workload that he's had to endure, partially with LeBron out, that's kind of caught up to him. So I think for both guys, like the Lakers really needed. I think that this few days of rest here, I think you're gonna see a spry group coming out of Game 1, but then after that, it's every other day, and I know it's probably going to add up to both sides where, both sides have guys in their 30s, but I just wonder, like, if LeBron plays the way he played in the Memphis series, I think the Lakers definitely lose this series. Like, they need a LeBron that we haven't really seen since his return from injury.
All right, gents, let's dive in on more LeBron, more Steph. Jovan, your point about LeBron is well taken, because I was going to get your perspective on that front. If I told you going into the first round, hey, Jovan, Lakers beat writer extraordinaire, LeBron's going to average 22, 11.2 rebounds, 5.2 assists. He's going to shoot 48.6% from the field. which for kind of, a mortal man, it sounds just fine, but he's had plenty of playoff series where he was in the 60s or in that neighborhood. And he's going to shoot 19.5% from three on high volume, 6.8 attempts per game. That would not bode well, you would imagine, for the Lakers. But again, they are built differently. Spin it forward for me with LeBron. Is he trending in the right direction? What are you seeing in terms of his impact in winning basketball from LeBron?
Well, he's found different ways to impact the game where, game 4, he gets a 20-20 first time in his career, playoffs or regular season. He grabs 20 rebounds in a game, ends up, making the layup to send the game to overtime. Then the game sealing and one over Dylan Brooks. He flexes to the crowd and roars. And that was really, I think, a special moment for him and the Lakers crowd with honestly, there haven't been many of them with their championship run coming in the bubble. He hasn't had a lot of playoff moments to celebrate, but that was one of them that I think, is going to be when we look back on LeBron in LA, like that's going to be one of those plays and one of those moments that I think is referenced. But I think for LeBron, he's been very jump shot heavy. And you mentioned like that 19% on threes has primarily been just him going like 2 for 9 a lot of nights or 4 for 14. And it's like, he's just relying too much on his 3-point shot. And, the Grizzlies were able to get away with Xavier Tillman defending LeBron, one-on-one for a lot of that series. And the fact that he either didn't have the confidence to drive by Xavier Tillman or just couldn't in some instances, would try to put a couple moves on him. Xavier would hang with him. And it was just like, this does not look like the LeBron that we're accustomed to blowing by the best defenders in the league. And now he's got this 6'8" big man center who's kind of slowing him down. So I wonder, how Golden's, I'm interested to see what Slater thinks, but, to Draymond's point, like he has been much more off the ball, and that's been the Lakers kind of splitting the ball handling duties between LeBron, D'Lo, Austin Reeves, Dennis when he's on the floor. They'll run some second side actions to get him in mismatches and post him up, ISO him. He'll of course run pick and roll with AD when they really need a bucket, but definitely more off the ball than we're accustomed to seeing. And I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if, can Golden State get away with Kevon Looney on him during stretches, like, and maybe putting Draymond on AD. Like, I'm really interested to see how they approach it.
This is where it was absolutely imperative that Andrew Wiggins return to the team. Like this type of matchup, like they can't handle a big wing if Andrew Wiggins isn't there. But now that Andrew Wiggins is back, and he wasn't great in Game 7, but I think generally, considering he missed 2 months, Sam and me were there. Like that was a pretty impressive series from Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, shameless plug. I'll have a little conversation with Andrew coming out on the website by the time this is out on Tuesday, I guess. And not to interrupt you, Slater, but like he's the headline of our conversation was him saying it's only going to get better from here. He talked about his wind, how he spent a lot of last playoffs picking up full court, and he's like, I haven't done it once in these playoffs. And so I think that's a huge factor for sure.
Yeah. Since he's gone to the Warriors, has become an elite wing defender, which, was absurd to think about a couple years ago. But you even go back to that playing game that Jovan referenced earlier. He was good on LeBron in that game. And then obviously you go to the playoffs last year. Great on Luka, great on Tatum. Remember what he did to Tatum in the finals? So like this isn't some like, throw Andrew Wiggins into the deep end. How's he going to handle it? I think they feel very good about like Andrew Wiggins taking a bulk of the LeBron matchup. They just against De'Aaron Fox had a tough time. I think Wiggins has a more difficult time with quicker guards like the Ja Morants, the Foxes. But he's 6'8", wiry, strong. What they can't do, which they tried on Fox, was like Gary Payton. Maybe Gary Payton gets a little bit, but he's really small for LeBron. Dante DiVincenzo, too small. The guy who I think is a wild card in this series, who completely fell out of the rotation during the last one and didn't really like that he did, but is Jonathan Kuminga. Physically, he can match LeBron just from a size, speed, lateral quickness, jump, all that. But Warriors got to get his head right, got to find lineups where he makes sense, because man, the Lakers ignore him. offensively. And he's not a horrible 3-point shooter. He shot like 35, 36%, but they just back off him so much, dare him to shoot. And he wants to believe that he's going to make the shot that it sometimes kind of stalls the Warriors offense out. So as far as the LeBron plan, though, I don't think you'll see much Looney. I think it's just going to be a lot of Wiggins, a sprinkle of some Kuminga if they can get him on the court. And then maybe at key moments, if LeBron's like really going off, you just Draymond, kind of like they did against Fox, right? If he needs to be the firefighter, if the house is burning down.
Guys, can we have the obligatory, and I may be tired, maybe cliche, but I think also interesting discussion about, legacy. You know what I mean? I know
I knew he was going to say legacy.
I know. But I don't pull this card. I really don't pull this card.
It's true, though.
It's
true.
It's true.
It's true.
It's a little weird in the second round. It's funny because I hesitate to bring this up for a second round series, but it is true. And here's the way I want to frame it. I mean, Steph, he gets plenty of love, plenty of respect. Everybody knows he's an all-time great. I was watching the good old Four Letter Network today, and Kendrick Perkins made a hell of a point when he was actually analyzing the all-time playoff records of some of the best players in today's game. And the point he made about Steph was that in terms of winning percentage, it has been overlooked and we're just talking about who's going to win Warriors Lakers. Well, guess what? Steph Curry has had 27 playoff series in his career. He's 23-4. Like, it's just absolutely insane. And
they just moved to 19-0 against Western Conference teams in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
I actually,
being a smart ass, I thought about this earlier with the Ja Morant quote, now we fine in the West. It's like, no, Steph Curry's fine in the West. That's who's fine in the West, is the dude who never loses in the West. 19-0 in the West, 23-4 overall, because we hyper focus in the media on championships, right? And so it is fascinating that Steph and LeBron are both at 4. LeBron with LeBron, you're talking about that combination of championships and sustained greatness and always contending. But he's been in 51 playoff series. 51. He's 40-11. I mean, that record is phenomenal as well. Whenever we would every year at The Athletic, we do these anonymous prediction things with scouts and executives. It always cracks me up because almost every person we talk to, they can't help themselves. One of the quotes is, well, I just can't bet against LeBron. Like, that's what you hear every single time. Well, that's why this series is fun, because guess what? You really shouldn't bet against Steph either. The historical framing of it, I think, is fantastic. It's just going to make it fun to watch. But my ultimate point is that, man, with Steph, and I know it's not, again, a boxing match. It's a team game. But this body of work and this 23-4 record and this continued greatness, this series he's coming off with the Kings, and I just looked at this, of all 27 series in terms of just good old-fashioned scoring, that was his 4th highest scoring total in a series of the 27 at 35 years old. And LeBron's doing what he's doing, even with a tough first round at 38. It's kind of like Draymond said after Game 7. Like, let's not try to turn the page too quick on the old fellas, because, damn, they're still good.
Yeah. 2 of the top 10 players in the league. I mean, Steph definitely is where we put LeBron at this point. He's still probably.
Yeah. I thought you were saying all, like, because to me.
Oh, all time.
Like, the all-time thing, I mean, it's not the same as winning a finals, obviously. But I think I wrote in my preview, like I feel like LeBron looks at this as there may as well be 12 Dylan Brooks on the other team. Like, I think this is going to be personal for LeBron. I think if he could get a win against the Warriors, a win against Steph as the underdogs yet again, for basically every, this is obviously the closest it's probably been maybe since 2016. I would say, in terms of like the matchup, but
for sure. I mean, Durant was on the last.
Yeah, but I think for LeBron to win this series, I think it would mean something to him. Obviously, again, not the same as beating the Warriors in the finals, not the same as winning a championship, but I think, like, for both sides, really, if Steph could get another one up on LeBron and is 4-1 in the playoffs against him, or LeBron could get another one and now it's 2-3 and that's a little bit more even, like, and then he can, because the other thing to this that's going to be fun is, like, Lakers Twitter versus Warriors Twitter. They've been on each other's corners for years, and LeBron fans versus Steph fans, and, like, LeBron wins, it's going to be, oh, we'll see what would have happened if KD wasn't there. And if Steph wins, it's going to be, we'll see, he didn't need KD. Like, it's just going to be back and forth with the fan bases and everything on
Large
Twitter
fan
with all this. So I think it matters to both sides. I think it obviously matters a little bit more to LeBron just because the Warriors have kind of been that thorn in his side for years, where if the Warriors never existed, LeBron probably has 6-7 championships. It's just, Steph went out there and then they got KD in it. They were just impossible to beat. So I think for LeBron, if he could beat the Warriors and again, not even it up, but get it closer to even, I think that matters.
No, well, not only that, right? Remember when the Raptors won in 2019, it felt like they stamped out the dynasty, and they're the ones. There was an extra like layer to their title because of that. We just saw it in the first round with the Kings, Sam, right? That wouldn't have just been the Kings winning a first round series, which the city would have been, adoring if they had taken down the Warriors and potentially, shoved the final dagger in the dynasty, because that's what we are potentially seeing right now. That's what felt like it was on the line in Game 7 when we were at yesterday. So, yeah, there's extra weight to beating the Warriors, and there's certainly extra weight to beating the Warriors if you may be the one that ends the Warriors.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. You gave me a flashback, Slater, to pregame at Game 7, and I wrote this. These Warriors in their spirit, and it sounds weird to give a hat tip to an owner. Joe Lacob has never hit a jumper with the Warriors jersey on, but there is something wild about the way they move. Because, and I probably wasn't going to write this unless they won, because, and I got his green light to write it, but like I'm talking to Joe pregame, and I don't even know why I was feeling so, I don't know what the word is, unfiltered, but I literally said to him, like, man, I would love to kind of be a fly on the wall in your boardroom, considering everything that's at stake. Of course, you guys want to extend this runway, and I'm paraphrasing, but I just put it on the table and said, but if you don't, if you lose tonight, like, my goodness. And they kind of just left it hanging right there. And Joe looks at me like I wrote, like I had 3 heads. He turns his head, looks at me, goes, if we lose, we're not losing. It was like, oh, okay, all right, and they get it done. And that's who they are. I mean, they have defiantly continued to do their thing. And
they have, but there's a reason they went to 7 against the Kings. There's a reason their backs were against the wall. There's a reason that Game 6 existed, where they got blown out by the Kings at home. This is
I'm not saying they're impervious.
A super stable state. They're not in a super stable state.
Well, listen, let's give a hat tip to what our Marcus Thompson and Shams wrote about that Steph Curry speech going into Game 7. To your point, Slater, okay, the headline, the takeaway, the interesting part is, man, Steph, who never speaks up, had a lot to say to his guys. You know what else was clear that he had to handle? He had to clean up their mess, which is guys are not in the right headspace. Guys were possibly looking at their own situations and getting sideways in terms of the way they are functioning or not functioning.
There's been a lot of sniping.
Right.
And that's it. Me and Marcus just did kind of like a secondary video that's on the Athletics YouTube feed. Andrew Selleck, you're going to be very happy. I said that YouTube feed. Subscribe now. Watch this. Me and Marcus did a video kind of going into more detail about what Steph may have, why he felt the need to deliver that speech. But, it's not anything over the top. There's no explosive, like a preseason punch type situation that has happened, like round 2 of that. But it's just a lot of sniping. And as Sam mentioned, like personal situations, Jordan Poole's and his struggles are obviously at the forefront of that. Jonathan Kuminga not getting a role in the last series. And
Slater, what you're hitting on is so interesting, because we have, in the matter of 6 weeks, maybe, we have gone from, I mean, the 2 timeline discussion was still kind of alive 6 weeks ago. The James Wiseman trade, of course, changed it a lot. And so it should surprise nobody that there's this human component behind the scenes internally with the Warriors, where by the time you get to the playoffs, like, Steph and the old fellas have basically, like, gotten this thing to a place where, no, we're just extending the runway. That's what we're doing. And a large part of that is the young fellas have not stepped up, and they have not seized the time that they've had. Yeah, and I could see where that would cause a lot of angst.
Yeah, and again, this is the flaw of the plan that's easier to look back on and I guess diagnose, but it's like, Jonathan Kuminga, understandably, as a raw prospect coming in, and he's still very young, isn't necessarily ready to play high level playoff defensive basketball and just eliminate defensive mistakes and only play sharp, role player type stuff. I think he's really good. I think he's gonna be a really good player. I think Jonathan Kuminga at 25 is gonna be like fringe all-star wing potentially. He flashed a lot in his second season. So I don't want to look back and go failed draft pick. I don't think it's a failed draft pick, but when they need specific 4-minute spurts from a role player in a series, it's tough to tell second-year player that wants to go out there and be like, ooh, I'm on the playoff stage. Let me get my Paul George on right now. It's like, no, they don't need that. They need the role-playing stuff. And right. I like that imbalance, that difficult to navigate situation that I just didn't think they saw coming when they decided to infuse the roster with all this youth. And it's been a problem. And then I just think Poole's had a up and down choppy season, and he had a bad first round series. He was really good in the playoffs last year. Jordan Poole was probably what, fourth, fifth most important player in the playoffs. So I just think he's in a little slump.
Jovan, so I got Warriors in this thing. I don't know how many games. It's always, 7 sounds pretty exciting.
Let's go 7. Just commit to
it. And I'm with Slater on the idea that the Warriors offense, I think, is going to struggle a lot more. The Kings play better defense than I thought they would, but that's a measured compliment because their defense was pretty bad in the regular season. And I think they will struggle at the rim. Steph's not going to be able to do, I don't think, what he did in game 7 against the Kings on the regular. They could become that jump shooting team that then gets a little sideways on that end. So, Warriors, however long, you know what I mean? 7's possible, maybe a little bit earlier, but I think Golden State moves on. Slater?
Yeah, I actually lean Lakers in 7. I think it's gonna be really difficult for the Warriors to score. I think that this is the end of what is a very tiring season for the Warriors. I think you saw it in that Kings series. It is very difficult to pick against, particularly the player I just saw score 50 in a game 7, and what Draymond is as a playoff competitor, what Clay has been, what their coaching staff has shown over the course of series, figuring stuff out. But it feels a little bit like that Raptors series, in the end of that playoff run, where it was just like the exhaustion felt like it was catching up to the franchise in general, organizational fatigue. We all know the situation looming with Bob Myers, even with Draymond, all the summer stuff. I just think if the Lakers can really defend at a very, very focused level, I just think it's going to be tough for a tired Warriors team. And I think game 1 is very stealable for the Lakers, and that's the one to go into chase and to try to get. Maybe I'll be ridiculed for picking against them because it is difficult to pick against them. But I think they're vulnerable.
Fair enough. All right, gentlemen, appreciate you. Look forward to seeing y'all in person, doing our thing, and we'll see you down at Chase tomorrow. And thank you, as always, to the listeners. We'll talk to you soon.